Hello, and welcome to this, the 8th chapter of the Amazing Maurice, where I am attempting to do voices, and I don't know what voices everyone has, so it is horribly inconsistent and awful. Chapter 8 of the Amazing Maurice. Mr. Bunsey realised that he was a fat rabbit in the dark wood, and wished he wasn't a rabbit, or at least not a fat one, but Ratty Rupert was on the way. Little did he know what was waiting for him, and what has been waiting for Maurice in this dark place. Can he outrun it? Can he escape? When the 3 rats slept, they were already too late. There was just a Maurice-shaped hole in the air. Maurice was across the room and scrambling up some boxes. There was a squeaking below him, and he jumped onto another box and saw a place in the wall where some rotten bricks had fallen out. He aimed for it and scrambled on thin air as more bricks moved under him and pushed himself into the unknown. It was another cellar, and it was full of water. In fact, what it was full of was not exactly water. It was what water eventually becomes when rat cages drain into it and gutters up above drain into it, and it has that chance to sit and bubble gently to itself for a year or so. To call it mud would be an insult to perfectly respectable swamps all over the world. Maurice landed in it. It went gloop. Maurice paddles through and drags himself up onto the other side. There's a falling rafter which leads up to more tangled blackened wood in the ceiling. A voice inside his head was trying to give him orders. Give a cat orders. Easier to nail jelly to a wall. Stinking mud oozed off him. Even his ears were full of mud. He went to lick himself clean and then stopped. It was a perfectly normal cat reaction, licking yourself clean, but licking this off would probably kill him. There's movement in the dark. He could make out the shapes coming through the hole and crawling along the wall. Hear the splashes as they came towards him. Ah, you see them? Watch them come for you, cat. Maurice stopped himself from running. This was no time to listen to his inner cat. His inner cat was an idiot. It wanted to attack everything smaller than him and run away from everything else. But he couldn't take this many. Hold on. The voice had said, "You can see them." How did it know? Maurice tried to think loudly. Can you hear my thoughts? Nothing happened. He shut his eyes. Open them! Came the immediate command, and his eyes trembled. Shan't, thought Maurice. You can't hear my thoughts. You can only use my eyes and ears. You were just guessing what I'm thinking. There was no reply. Maurice didn't wait. He leapt. The sloping beam was where he remembered it, and he clawed his way up and hung on. All they could do was follow him up. With any luck, he could use his claws. Maurice keeps his eyes tightly shut as the rats sniff and search for him, coming close, but not coming to him. Maurice wrinkled his mud-caked forehead in amazement. Rats who couldn't smell a cat. And then he realized he didn't smell of cat. He stank of mud. He felt like mud, in a room full of stinking mud. He sat as still as stone until he hears the rats head back and feels his way up, then through a rotted door into another cellar. Would the voice know where he was if he opened his eyes now? Didn't one cellar look like the other? Perhaps this room was full of rats too. His eyes sprang open. No rats. But he could see a light through a drain cover with a Maurice-sized hole. All I need now is a hole into the outside world, and they won't see me for dust, or at least for bits of dried mud. A voice in his head, which wasn't the mysterious voice, but a voice just like his own, said, "But what about the stupid-looking kid and the rest of them? You ought to help them." And Maurice thought, "Where did you come from? I'll tell you what, you help them, I'll go somewhere warm. How about that?" The light at the end of the tunnel grew brighter, and Maurice passed his head out of the pipe and into a circle of candlelight. "It's Maurice," said Peaches. "Smells better than he usually does," said Darktan, in what Maurice thought was an unfriendly way. "Oh, ha, ha," said Maurice. I knew you wouldn't let us down, old friend, said Dangerous Beans. I have always said that we can depend on Maurice, at least. Yes, said Ducktan. Depend on him to do what? Good, said Maurice. I found you all, then. Yes, said Ducktan in what Maurice thought was a nasty tone. Amazing, isn't it? I expect you've been looking for us for a long time. I saw you rush off to look for us. Can you help us? Said Dangerous Beans. We need a plan. I suggest we go upwards at every opportunity to rescue Ham and Pork, said Ducktan. We don't leave our people behind. We don't? We don't. And then there's the kid, said Peaches. Sardine says he's tied up in a cellar with the female kid. Oh, well, humans. Humans, it's a human kind of thing, and I don't think we should really get involved. We'd be misunderstood. I know about humans. They'll sort it out. I don't give a ferret's shilt for humans, snapped Ducktan. But those rat catchers took Ham and Pork off in a sack. You saw them. You saw the room cat. You saw the rats crammed into cages. It's the rat catchers that were stealing the food. And there's something else. A voice, said Maurice before he could stop himself. Ducktan looked up. You heard it. I thought it was just us. The rat catchers heard it too, only they think it's their own thoughts. It frightened the others, mumbled Dangerous Beans. They just stopped thinking. He looked absolutely dejected. Open beside him, grubby with dirt and paw marks, was Mr. Bunsey Has an Adventure. Even Toxie ran off, and he knows how to write. How can that happen? It seemed to affect some of us more than others, said Ducktan in a more matter-of-fact voice. I've sent up some of the more sensible ones to try and round up the rest, but it's going to be a long job. They were just running blindly. We've got to get Ham and Pork. He's the leader. We're rats, after all. A clan. Rats will follow the leader. But he's old, and you're the tough one, and he's not exactly the brains of the outfit, Maurice began. They took him away, said Ducktan. They're rat catchers. He's one of us. Are you going to help us or not? Help you? Yeah, Maurice said hurriedly, climbing out of the pipe and turning to investigate the scratching noise he'd heard. Do you really mean that, Maurice? Said Peaches. Yeah, right. No rats. Sardines is following the rat catchers, said Ducktan. So we'll find out where they're taking him. I've got a bad feeling I already know, said Maurice. How? Snapped Peaches. I'm a cat, right? Cats hang out in places. We see things. A lot of places don't mind cats wandering because we keep down the All right. We know you don't eat anyone who can talk. You keep telling us. Get on with it. I was in a place once and there was this barn. I was in the hayloft where you can always find, Peaches rolled her eyes. Yes, go on. Well, anyway, all these men came in and I couldn't get away because they had a lot of dogs. And they shut up the barn doors. And they put down this kind of round wooden wall in the middle of the floor. And then there were some men with boxes of rats and they tipped the rats into the ring. And then they put some dogs in too. Terriers. He tried to avoid their expressions. The rats fought the dogs, said Ducktan. Well, I suppose they could have done. They mostly just ran round and round. It's called rat coursing. Rat coursing? How is it that we've never heard of this? Maurice blinked at them. Rats could be amazingly stupid at times. Why would you hear about it? Surely one of the rats who... You don't seem to understand. The rats who went into the pit didn't come out. At least, not breathing. There was silence. Can't they jump out? Asked Peaches. Do I? Why don't they fight against the dogs? Said Ducktan. Because they're rats, Ducktan. Lots of rats, all stinking at one another's fear and panic. You know how it happens. I bit a dog on the nose once. Right. One rat can think and be brave. A bunch of rats is just a big animal with lots of legs and no brains. That's not true, said Peaches. Together we are strong. Exactly how high? What? Asked Peaches and Maurice together. The wall. Exactly how high? I don't know how high. Humans were leaning their elbows on it. Doesn't matter. Everything we've done is because we've stuck together, Peaches began. We'll rescue ham and pork together then, said Darktan. Well, he's interrupted by Sardines, who has nourishing. With them, they confirm that Darktan is at the pit. Right, said Darktan. We're going to get ham and pork out of there. Sardines, you will show me the way. We'll try and pick up the others as we go. The rest of you should try and find the kid. Why are you giving the orders? Said Peaches. Because someone has to, said Darktan. Ham and pork might be a bit scabby and set in his ways, but he's the leader, and everyone smells that, and we need him. Any questions? Right. Can I come, sir? Said Nourishing. She's helping me carry my string, boss, Sardines explained. Both he and the younger rat were carrying bundles of it. You need all that. You should never say no to a piece of string, boss. It's amazing some of the stuff I've been finding. All right, so long as she's useful for something. She'd better be able to keep up. Let's go. It's just Peaches, Dangerous Beans, and Maurice left. They discuss the voice, and Dangerous Beans is all depressed and looking at Mr. Bunsey sadly. As soon as there's trouble, we're just rats. If it's any help, I'm just a cat, Maurice said, feeling unusually sympathetic. Oh, but you are not. You are kind, and deep down I sense you have a generous nature. At least you ask people before you eat them, said Peaches. You'd better tell them, said Maurice's thoughts. Go on, you'll feel better. Maurice tried to get his thoughts to shut up. What a time to get a conscience. What good was a cat with a conscience? A cat with a conscience was a hamster or something. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, he muttered. Go on then, tell them, his shiny new conscience said. Get it out in the open. He describes a rat, quite big, one ear, bit of white on one side, couldn't run too fast because of a bad leg, which they identify as additives, who disappeared before they met Maurice. Did you meet him, Maurice? Did you meet him, Maurice? Said Peaches, her stare nailing him to the wall. Maurice's face moved. It tried various facial expressions, one after the other. Then he said, Alright, I ate him, okay? All of him, except for the tail and the green wobbly bit and that nasty purple lump no one knows what it is. I was just a cat. I hadn't learned to think yet. I didn't know. I was hungry. Cats eat rats, and that's how it goes. It wasn't my fault. And he'd been eating the magic stuff, and I ate him, and then I got changed too. You know how that feels, seeing the green wobbly bit like that? It doesn't feel good. Sometimes on dark nights I think I can hear him talking down there. Alright, satisfied? I didn't know he was anyone. I didn't know I was anyone. I ate him. I'd been eating the stuff in the dump, and I admit it, I ate him, and it wasn't my fault. There was silence, and after a long while Peaches said, Yes, but that was a long time ago, wasn't it? What, have I eaten anyone since then? No. Are you sorry you did? Said Dangerous Beans. Sorry, what do you think? Sometimes I have nightmares where he... Then it's probably alright. Alright, I'm a cat. Cats don't go around feeling sorry or guilty whenever regret anything. You know what it feels like saying, Hello, food, can you talk? That's not how a real cat is supposed to behave. We don't act like real rats are supposed to behave. Up until now. Dangerous Beans got depressed again, and Peaches reads to him from Mr. Bunsey. It always helps him get through his dark times. She reads the part where they talk to humans. This is mad, thought Maurice. Everything's going down the drain, and they just have this picture in their heads about how nice things could be. Maurice argues with his conscience about if he should leave or stay. Eventually his conscience wins. We'd better see what happened to the kid. Melissa and Keith are in a completely black cellar. Melissa keeps asking him if he's got matches or a sharp edge or the ability to get his hands in front of himself or knives or secret powers. He doesn't. You know, in many ways, I don't think this adventure's been properly organized. Oh, really? Said Keith. This is not how people should be tied up. This isn't a story, Keith said, as patiently as possible. Eventually, Melissa went on about her storytelling bloodline, her dad not liking stories, telling stories until she says, Aren't you interested in anything except music? You broke your pipe. I expect I'll buy another one. The calm voice infuriated Melissa. Well, I'll tell you something, she said. If you don't turn your life into a story, you'll just become a part of someone else's story. And what if your story doesn't work? You keep changing it until you find one that does. Sounds silly. You let a cat make all the decisions. That's because Maurice is. A voice said, Would you like us to go away until you stopped being human? Maurice, said Keith, where are you? I'm in a drain, and believe me, it has not been a good night, said Maurice. Peaches is bringing a candle in. It's too dark for even me to see you. Who's Peaches? Whispered Melissa. She's another changeling, a thinking rat, said Keith. Like pilchards, like sardines, yes. Aha, see? A story. I am smug. I gloat. The plucky rats rescue our heroes, probably by gnawing through the ropes. There were faint sounds in the darkness. What are they doing now? She whispered. Trying to light their candle, I think. Rats play with fire. They don't play. Dangerous Beans thinks lights and shadows are very important. They always have a candle or light somewhere in their tunnels when they're... Dangerous Beans? What sort of name is that? Shh, they just learned about words of food tins and signs and things. They didn't know what the words meant. They just liked the sounds. Yes, but Dangerous Beans sounds a bit as if it makes you... It's his name, don't make fun of it. Sorry, I'm sure. The candle is lit and Melissa can finally see the small rats and the beat-up old book they're carrying with them, though she can't make out the cover. They all introduce themselves and Peaches cuts into the rope with a bit of blade they use for a pencil sharpener. Nourishing had to run to keep up with Darktan, and Darktan was running because he had to run to keep up with Sardines. When it came to moving fast across the town, Sardines was the champion of the world. They picked up more rats along the way. Nourishing couldn't help noticing that these were mostly the younger ones who'd fled because of the terror and hadn't gone far. Sardines reached the edge of a roof and leapt, landing on a wall just below. He ran along the top and disappeared into a crack between two planks. Nourishing followed him, into a kind of hayloft, and over the beam which was directly over the pit. Men were crowded around it, and dogs were tied up against the walls. Quick, how the crap will we get to find Ham and Pork in this lot? Darktan said. Well, with Ham and Pork, boss, I reckon we'll just know when he shows up. Could you drop into the pit on a string? I'm game for anything, Gov. Won't the string cut you in half? Said Nourishing. I've got something that helps there, boss. Under his cord of string was a heap of rubber bands. Darktan saw an old candle nearby. Good, he said, because I've got an idea. If you can drop down... There was a roar from below. The rats look over the beam and see the rat catchers empty sacks of rats into the pit. The rats that fall out scurry around looking for a corner to hide in, while a man holding a terrier approaches the edge of the pit and drops the dog in with the rats. Nourishing tears her gaze away and catches the look on Darktan's face. His eyes are full of fire as she watches him look to the doors of the stable, which have been boarded shut, and its piles of hay and straw, and he pulls a stick from his belt, and Nourishing can smell the sulphur. My plan might not work. If it doesn't, you'll be in charge of the other plan. Me, said Nourishing. You, because I won't be around. He held out the match. You know what to do. Nourishing swallowed. Yes, I think so. When? When the time comes, you'll know when. He looked down at the massacre. One way or the other, I want them to remember tonight. They'll remember what they did, and they'll remember what we did, for as long as they live. Ham and Pork lay in his sack. He could smell the other rats nearby, and the dogs, and the blood, especially the blood. He could hear his own thoughts. They were chirping insects in the thunderstorm of his senses. Red-hot rage still boiled inside him. Ham and Pork. Me. Leader. Now he could hear voices. Just slip him in, no one will notice. Alright, I'll shake him up a bit to get him angry. But there wasn't room for any more anger. Ham and Pork was dumped into the struggling rats. He clawed his way to the top as the dog was lowered in. The dog grabbed a rat, shook it, and the rat stampeded. Idiots! Screamed Ham and Pork. Work together. You could strip this flea bag to the bone. The crowd stopped shouting. The dogs stared at Ham and Pork. It was trying to think. The rat had spoken, and only humans spoke. He grabbed the rat, shook him, not too hard, and tossed him down. A test. It was good to kill rats, but biting humans got you a serious thrashing. If he got a wallop, then this rat was human. There was a deep tooth wound in Ham and Pork's side. He spat blood. "All right, now you'll find out how a real rat dies." Ham and Pork. He looked up. Sardines was falling, getting bigger and slower. He raised his hat to the dog politely and wrapped all 4 limbs around him. Jacko snapped at empty air as they went up, and Darktan leapt off the other side. Nourishing was doing some frantic knotting and biting, and now Darktan was on the other end of Sardine's string. His weight alone wasn't enough. So when he saw Sardines and Ham and Pork disappear safely onto the beam, he dropped the candle lamp he'd been holding onto Jacko and landed in the pit. The rats around Darktan scrambled aimlessly. The crowd was silent. "Right, you crooks," said Darktan loud enough for the watchers to hear. "Now I'm going to show you how a rat can live." Jacko was not a bad dog, according to the way of dogs. He was a terrier, and liked killing rats in any case, and killing lots of rats in the pit meant that he got well fed and called a good boy and wasn't kicked very often. Some rats did fight back, and that wasn't much of a problem, because they were smaller than Jacko, and he had a lot more teeth. Jacko wasn't that smart, but he was a lot smarter than a rat, and in any case, his nose and mouth did most of the thinking. Darktan didn't run like a rat should. He ducked like a fighter. He nipped Jacko under the chin and vanished. Jacko had spent his whole show business career fighting rats that ran away. Rats that stayed really close were unfair. There was a roar from the crowd. Someone shouted, $10 on the rat, before he was punched in the head and a fight broke out. Darktan waited for his moment and saw it, lunged, bit hard. A piece of Jacko that was very private and of interest only to Jacko and any lady dogs he might happen to meet was suddenly a little ball of pain. He desperately tried to climb out of the pit. Darktan jumped up his tail, crawled up his back and leapt off his nose over the wall. Men tried to stamp him, but by the time they'd pushed each other out of the way, he was gone. Dogs pulled away from ropes and chains, but Darktan knew about running. He sped across the floor, spied a hole, and dived into the nice, safe darkness. Click went the trap. And that's chapter 8. A cliffhanger for you. Although they're all cliffhangers, really. There's like a million of them. You always want to see what happens next in a book like this. That's me scrunching up a chapter marker, if you could hear that. How fun. Thank you very much for listening again and putting up with my voices. My voices aren't grand right now, but I'm trying. I'll try for the rest of it, and I might have said I was trying last time. Like last recording session? Months ago. I might have said I was trying last time. I might have said fuck it, I'm not doing voices last time. But I think voices are better. This is my current opinion. And I'm going to work hard even though I suck. And hopefully within a couple of books I'll be pretty good. And hopefully I'll actually get these books out. Because that'd be pretty swell. I want to try and do 1 video a week. I want to try and get up to the point where I'm doing that. As far as if anyone wants to know what I've been doing, I have been learning how to be a swim teacher, and I have been learning sign language, and that's taken up a lot of my time, and a lot of my effort, and a lot of my mind. So that's the fun things I've been up to. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in chapter 9. I hope, probably, possibly, at least someone eventually. Bye.